G'day YouTube. Hauline Pantsdown says, vote One Nation, vote Nazi, get your guns back. Hitler had only one left ball, Goering had two but they were small. Himmler had something similar and poor old Goebbels had no balls at all. Tra-la-la-la-la-la-la. Hitler had only one left ball, Goering had two but they were small. Himmler had something similar and poor old Goebbels had no balls at all. And despite his influence on the course of human affairs, being the man who proved that you can get an entire nation to believe that a square is a circle, Joseph Goebbels didn't make it onto the front cover of the historical documentary box of DVDs. It's such a witty little ditty, composed when the British Empire was terribly shitty, with what a nasty bunch of vicious mongrel bastards the Nazis had all turned out to be. And so the British Imperial Department of Public Information decided to compose a ditty, some doggerel with which to lift the sagging spirits of the homeland morale. Therefore, thus and because, they poked fun at Adolf Hitler for having only one ball, for being a hemicastrati, a relic of a war wound. And he had to have one leg sewn up and he lost one nut in the fray. Which meant that not only was Adolf of the Hitler variety a little man who'd been frightened, and they're reputed to sneak up behind you later on and try and kill you as vengeance, Adolf Hitler was also a one-ball wonder, suffering from an overcompensated inferiority complex as he tried to prove that he was as good as a real full man. Therefore, he attempted to conquer the world. And he believed in a lot of really silly ideas. Adolf Hitler believed that might makes right. I'll say it again. He believed that might makes right. If you're stronger than someone, if you can overpower them, he believed you have the right to do so, if you will. He believed that the end justifies the means. So if he had to kill Europe's Jews by the millions so that he could establish his vision of Der Third Reich, the 1,000-year Reich, which lasted from 1933 to 1945, 12 years for the 1,000-year Reich, he was fully entitled to do that. And it was because Adolf Hitler believed that might makes right and that the end justifies the means. Therefore, thus and because, the great British Empire, the excited status of Norte Armed Americano, and the United Soviet Socialist Republics together formed a grand alliance for the explicit purpose of shooting Adolf Hitler and everybody who agreed with him and supported him and believed in his theories. However, there are people today in Australia who believe that might makes right. They believe that they should be permitted to carry firearms concealed for the purposes of self-defence if and when somebody perhaps attacks them. They believe that because the citizens of the excited status of Norte Armed Americano are permitted to carry deadly weapons for self-defence, that you should be allowed to do that in Australia because, you know, like we're the 51st state, aren't we? You know, like that's patriotic. Hey, we fought in Vietnam, Absurdistan, twice, Iraq again, Syria, yeah, Vietnam, Korea. We're the 51st state, aren't we? Surely we can have American gun laws. What's wrong with that, eh? Apparentarily. So there's been a bit of a groundswell for a while among the gun lobby in Australia. And we've had this confluence of events, you see. Let's take it from the beginning. Several months ago, the Australian Parliament voted in the lower house, ratified by the upper house, to make it illegal for any Australian individual standing for Parliament or any Australian political party to solicit for donations from overseas governments or organisations. Okay? and a man called Mark Latham, who used to be the Labor Party's parliamentary federal leader when he was in opposition after Paul Keating lost power and John Howard had taken over, and Mark Latham was somebody who stood for the job. And he didn't have a very good time of it because, not to put too fine a point on it, he had a fair bit of sick leave. And he had his sick leave when he had recurring bouts of what they call pancreatitis. And as a nurse, my recollection of the textbook says the way to get pancreatitis is binge drinking. That wasn't a good look for the leader of the Labor Party. And the other thing that kind of went against him was he was like Adolf. He was a hemicastrati. He lost one nut to testicular cancer, and on the one hand, nobody wanted to talk about it, but on the other hand, the media kept patting him on the back for being so brave, for making the comeback and all the rest of it. At least that's how I recall it. Maybe I've got the wrong Labor Party leader, but I don't think so. I don't think so. Anyway, Mark Latham, who used to be a Labor Party leader, he stood for the One Nation Party in New South Wales for a Senate seat. And as part of the build-up to the election in New South Wales, which everybody expected to be kind of a line ball because the Liberal Party in the cities was kind of holding its own. The Labor Party was doing pretty well for a while, but they had a silly kind of a leader. But the National Party has alienated and disaffected all the farmers. The National Party has become known as the party of big business and the miners, and the farmers can go to buggery. And the dead fish in the inland rivers, that didn't help the National Party's look. So apparently the New South Wales Minister for Water, he'd been getting death threats from his own constituents. So as soon as the election was over, that's it. He pulled the pin. He's out of there. And who's been harvesting the National Party disaffected vote? Well, there's One Nation, the mob Latham's standing for. There's also the farmers, hunters, fishers, shooters and feral pig rooters party. And their whole agenda has been to wind back the 1996 Howard era Australian National Firearms Agreement because they want more access to guns. On a federal level, there's also people like Senator Fraser Anning, the Fruit Loop, who got an egg smacked on his head because he said that, oh, it's not white terrorism when you get a white Australian expatriate crossing the Tasman because that's where you can buy high-capacity magazines for your fast-firing semi-automatic military-style assault rifles. And he wanted one of them because what he had to do, because of what's going on in his head, he wanted to go to a mosque. And according to Fraser Anning, because the terrorist was so scared of Muslim immigrants, therefore he went to a mosque where they were all on the ground worshipping their God. And he shot 100 of them at 2 mosques, and he killed 50 of them because he was so scared of the Muslim immigration because, you know, he was a white national Christian white supremacist, a gun lobbyist. And because he was a white nationalist Christian, and Christians are rebellious Jews, and Jews are God's chosen race, therefore God's on his side, so you wouldn't think he should be too scared of the Muslims, even though the Muslims, you know, they worship all the same prophets who talk about the same God, clear back to Abraham's God, because Jews, Christians and Muslims are all children of the book. Anyway, this particular white supremacist Christian terrorist, he was so scared of the Muslims in New Zealand that he crossed the Tasman to go over there and kill them. That's Fraser Anning's theory. Fraser Anning wants us to have the ability to carry pistols concealed to keep ourselves safe. There's another Queensland independent senator. He's got a party of one. He calls himself a Liberal Democrat, but he's not part of the Liberal Party and he's never been part of the Democrat Party. And his agenda seems to be to change the gun laws so that his mates in the firearm importation industry will be able to import and sell 10-shot lever-action shotguns. His name's either Little Proud or Little Dick or Little John or something little. Yeah. One Nation and Clive Palmer, they try to harvest these disaffected right-wing gun nuts who want to be able to wind back time. Palmer, like One Nation, tends not to vet his candidates very well, and therefore halfway through the campaign they turn out to have a criminal record, or they're dual citizens, or when they do get elected, then they're dual citizens, and or they leave his party. So these are the kind of Fruit Loops who are out there all trying to harvest the gun nut vote. They're trying to harvest the disaffected farmers, really, the people who are upset about the drought, people who are upset about the effects of global warming and the climate science that they've been denying for the past 40 years. The right-wing extremists are trying to harvest all those disaffected, bankrupted farmers, the people who've got no water and no prospect of being able to borrow any more money to sow any more crops because so many have failed already. And the right-wing wannabe totalitarians are trying to get elected on the vote of the people who are being broken by the drought. And that's where things were yesterday. This morning, big news. Somebody called Muller, who used to work for the ABC late line program, who got retrenched because the right wing said cut money to the ABC, cut funding to them bloody left-wing liberals, under the American term of the word liberal. Anyway, he's been working for Al Jazeera, and he set up a fake lobby group to agitate for the liberalisation, the relaxation of Australia's gun laws. And he started going to meetings, and he was going to all these meetings, talking to people, sounding back to them what they were saying to him. And he saw that One Nation were claiming that they had connections with the National Rifle Association, so he talked to them. And he got them to disclose all their deepest desires. And after he held a mirror up to them and told them what they wanted to hear, then One Nation, because he told them that he had connections in the excited states, One Nation got him, invited him, say, come along to the United States with us, we're going to send a mission to the excited states, we're going to ask the National Rifle Association for help with fixing Australia's gun laws because we think they're so broken, you see. None of this is on the One Nation policy platform statement. This is just the second and third in command. Dixon and Ashby by name. So anyway, the fellow from Al Jazeera had hidden cameras, hidden microphones, all the rest of it. He got the One Nation turkeys telling him how they were reporting back to Pauline Hanson, so she knew about all of this. He got the One Nation turkeys asking the National Rifle Association for $20 million on the promise that they could win enough seats in Australia to reverse the 1996 National Firearms Agreement. He also got them talking about how they were going to ask the Koch brothers. Okay, everybody in Australian politics condemned One Nation for this scurrilous, treasonous, seditious attack on the Australian electoral system. And by about mid-morning, One Nation had said, oh, it's not our fault, it's all the fault of Al Jazeera. You know, we're reporting them to ASIO because they're a foreign organisation and they were trying to influence Australian politics. They were trying to influence Australian electoral politics by going along at One Nation's invitation when One Nation invited the dummy lobbying group to go over and help them ask Americans for $20 million to interfere with Australian electoral politics. And Mark Latham got elected. The man who only 2 weeks before he was elected was saying that he wanted to have all Australians on social security who said they were Aborigines DNA tested to make sure they had at least 25% Aboriginal DNA. Because Mark Latham, the white Australian suburban ex-Labor Party leader, he thinks that he can tell Aborigines who's Aborigine. He's not prepared to let the Department of Social Security leave it up to the local Aboriginal community to say who's an Aborigine. And despite the fact there's no evidence that anybody is falsely claiming an Aboriginal benefit, Mark Latham thinks it'll play well among the gun nuts who he wants to vote Nazi. So, One Nation and the Nazis, the independent Fruit Loops, the gun nuts, the people who say they're going to give you your guns back, if you just vote for them and let them be totalitarians. Latham has only one left ball. Palmer has two, but they are small. Catter, mad as a hatter, and Hauline Pantsdown has no balls at all. Tra-la-la-la-la-la-la. Latham has only one left ball. Palmer has two, but they are small. Catter, mad as a hatter, and Hauline Pantsdown has no balls at all. Vorpels on lot to YouTube. Ciao!